Which Xenos civilization would you rather live in? Mind-controlled but well-fed, totally free but possibly dinner for your neighbor? Or immortal yet slowly hollowing out spiritually? These stark choices face non-human species throughout the 40k universe. Blood-soaked paradoxes await as we explore the Imperium's infamous Purge the Xenos policy. Sometimes horrifyingly justified, other times disastrously short-sighted. By the end of this video, you'll understand why each alien civilization serves as a funhouse mirror reflecting human society's darkest impulses and aspirations. The boundaries separating noble alien cultures from nightmarish ones? Thinner than a harlequin's blade edge. The Greater Deception. Tau's superficial utopia. In a universe full of nightmarish horrors, the Tau Empire stands out like a beacon of hope. With their sleek technology, philosophy of unity, and actual concern for the welfare of their citizens, they seem like the closest thing 40k has to genuine good guys. I mean, come on, they're the only faction not actively trying to murder everything that moves, right? Wrong. So very, very wrong. Behind the progressive facade of the Tau lies something potentially more insidious than even the most blood-soaked Imperial crusade. Their entire society is built on a rigid caste system that would make India's historical hierarchy look flexible. From the moment of birth, every Tau's entire existence is predetermined by which of the 5 castes they belong to. The Fire caste forms the military backbone of the Empire, trained from childhood to become disciplined warriors who operate those sweet battlesuits. The Water caste handles diplomatic relations and trade, expanding Tau influence through negotiation. The Earth caste builds infrastructure and technology, while the Air caste pilots the ships. At the top sit the Ethereals, spiritual and political leaders who guide the entire empire. Here's the dark truth. The Ethereals control the entire population using specialized pheromones. The Tau's famous unity and dedication to the greater good isn't a philosophical choice, but a biological imperative. When an Ethereal speaks, Tau obey without question, their free will completely overridden like puppets on invisible strings. Commander Farsight discovered this horrible reality when he and his forces were cut off from ethereal contact. The mind control isn't subtle. When an ethereal gives an order, Tau follow it without question, as if under some creepy hypnotic spell. This awakening led Farsight to establish his own breakaway enclave, free from ethereal manipulation. The Tau's treatment of other species they've peacefully integrated is equally disturbing. Humans who join the Tau face sterilization, ensuring their populations gradually die out while they serve as second-class citizens. The greater good apparently doesn't extend to reproductive rights for non-Tau species. What makes this particularly suspicious is a connection between Ethereals and other species called the Ko'or. The mind control pheromones used by Ethereals mirror those employed by Ko'or's swarm queens, suggesting the Ethereals might have been engineered specifically to control the Tau population. Their propaganda machine is unmatched. The Water caste expertly paints Tau society as a utopia where everyone contributes harmoniously, convincing other species to willingly submit to their rule, only for them to discover the truth about mind control and sterilization when it's too late. What's especially dangerous about the Tau is their technological advancement paired with their complete naivete about the true horrors of the galaxy. They fundamentally don't understand chaos or the warp's dangers, making them vulnerable to corruption in ways they can't comprehend. It's like watching a toddler play with a loaded bolter. Disaster is inevitable. The fallout of perfection. Aeldari's self-destruction. If you think the Tau's relationship with the warp is problematic, wait until you hear about the most catastrophic party in galactic history. The Aeldari went full throttle into a cosmic orgy that literally birthed a god who found their souls absolutely delicious. And unlike the naive Tau, the Aeldari had no excuse. They were the undisputed masters of the galaxy with technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. Imagine a civilization that could reshape stars, traverse a galaxy instantly, and harness the raw power of the warp effortlessly. That was the Aeldari Empire at its peak. A psychically gifted species whose mastery over reality made even the most advanced human technology look like children playing with sticks. Their empire showcased unparalleled achievements in every conceivable field. But here's the problem with having everything you could ever want. Eventually, you start wanting really weird stuff. With no challenges to their dominance, the Aeldari grew bored, and bored immortal psychics with godlike technology transformed fun into catastrophe. Their society descended into increasingly extreme forms of stimulation. Artistic exploration became sensory enhancement, which evolved into murderous hedonism that would make the most depraved human serial killers seem like kindergartners playing tag. The cosmic festival of excess became catastrophic, because the Aeldari's deep connection to the warp meant their collective psychic energies were creating something horrifying. Every twisted desire, every sadistic thrill fed a growing mass of psychic energy, a galactic feedback loop of depravity that spiraled completely out of control. Then came the fall, which is like calling the extinction of the dinosaurs a rough day. This accumulated psychic energy coalesced into Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure. The birth created a psychic shockwave that obliterated most of the Aeldari civilization and consumed countless souls. Trillions of beings simultaneously felt their souls ripped away and devoured. This cataclysm created the Eye of Terror, a massive warp rift that still scars the galaxy today. Some Aeldari recognized the signs of impending doom and split into several factions, each with their own survival strategy. The craft world Aeldari fled on massive continent-sized starships, adopting rigid emotional control through the path system, hyper-focusing on single aspects of life to prevent emotional extremes. They used spirit stones to capture their souls at death, keeping them safely away from Slaanesh's hungry maw. The Drukhari couldn't quit their hedonism addiction, so they escaped to Camorra in the webway. Their solution? Torture others and feed on their pain to distract Slaanesh from their own souls. It's throwing someone else to the sharks while swimming away. Effective, but monstrously cruel. The Harlequins pledge their souls to Sugarok, the god of trickery. They preserve Aeldari history through elaborate, deadly performances, essentially murderous theater kids with divine protection. The Exodites abandoned their technological lifestyle long before the fall to live on distant worlds in harmony with nature. These space elves went full hobbit, trading star travel for sustainable farming and dragon riding. Because even when Aeldari go primitive, they do it with style. Soulless machines. The Necrons' Pyrrhic victory. While the Aeldari fight to preserve their souls, there's a species that willingly gave them up completely. The Necrontyr traded everything that made them living beings for immortality and revenge. And 60 million years later, they're still paying the terrible price. Their story might be the most tragic in a galaxy overflowing with suffering. The Necrontyr lived a miserable existence on a radiation-soaked planet under a dying sun. Their bodies were racked with cancers and genetic defects, their lives painfully short. Despite this agony, these spiteful beings built an impressive interstellar empire through sheer determination. When they discovered the immortal, psychically powerful Old Ones, their deep-seated bitterness transformed into murderous jealousy, igniting the catastrophic War in Heaven. Facing defeat against the Old Ones, the Necrontyr made a desperate pact with cosmic entities called the Satan, ancient star gods that existed as pure energy. In a pivotal moment of species-wide desperation, their greatest scientists created metal bodies for these celestial beings. The C'tan, now physically manifested, offered the Necron tier what they craved most: eternal life through biotransference. But the C'tan concealed the horrific truth. The biotransference process transferred consciousness into metallic bodies, but stripped away their souls. Like exchanging a beating heart for cold clockwork, billions marched willingly into the chambers, emerging as emotionless Necrons. They retained memories of feelings but could no longer experience them, remembering families without understanding why they once cared. The Silent King, Sarzek, horrified by what his people had done, led the Necrons in rebellion against the C'tan. They shattered their gods into fragments and imprisoned them in Tesseract labyrinths. Exhausted from war, Sarzek ordered his people into stasis tombs beneath countless worlds, where they would sleep for millions of years. In the 41st millennium, as tomb worlds activate, not all Necrons awaken intact. The nobility, overlords, lords, and cryptex, retained most of their personalities. The lower castes lost nearly everything, becoming automatic servants obeying commands without thought. Necron technology borders on magical. Their Gauss weapons unravel victims molecule by molecule. Their monoliths teleport armies. The terrifying celestial orrery, a perfect galactic model, can destroy actual stars with the slightest touch. A careless gesture from a Necron could annihilate entire star systems. Yet, beneath their mechanical horror lies something eerily relatable. The Necrons didn't choose to become monsters. They chose survival and were betrayed. Many dynasties now seek to reverse biotransference, desperate to reclaim their lost flesh and souls. The Silent King himself has returned from exile beyond the galaxy with this single purpose. For all their technological marvels and immortality, what the Necrons truly desire is devastatingly simple: to feel again. Their endless existence has become a search for what makes life worth living, transforming these ancient terrors from antagonists into tragic figures trapped in bodies that cannot die, while housing minds that remember what it meant to be alive. Perfect predators, the Tyranid hive-mind. Unlike the Necrons who traded their souls for immortality, there's something far more terrifying prowling at the edges of our galaxy. A predator that never had individual souls to begin with. The stars at the galaxy's edge are literally disappearing as something consumes everything in its path. Entire solar systems are being devoured. What could possibly possess such an appetite? The answer is both elegantly simple and utterly horrifying. The Tyranids are a singular entity wearing trillions of bodies like clothing. Every Tyranid organism is merely an extension of one vast consciousness. Imagine a collective intelligence where every cell has teeth and an insatiable hunger. That's the Tyranid hive mind. It doesn't command its creatures, it is its creatures, orchestrating every movement across countless organisms. When a Tyranid hive fleet approaches a planet, the process is pure consumption. Spores rain down, altering the atmosphere, preparing the world for digestion like stomach acid softening food. Then come the organisms themselves, from tiny rippers stripping vegetation to massive biotitans crushing resistance. They liquefy all organic matter, sucking it through massive capillary towers into orbiting bioships, leaving nothing but a dead rock stripped of atmosphere, water, and every trace of biomass. What makes the Tyranids truly nightmarish is their endless adaptability. The hive mind functions like a biological algorithm, constantly rewriting its own code. Fighting them resembles battling a computer program that learns from every interaction. The hive mind analyzes enemy tactics in real time, and immediately produces new bioforms specifically engineered as countermeasures. Face them with tanks? Watch acid-spewing creatures emerge in the next wave. Try psychic attacks? The hive mind spawns specialized zoanthropes with enhanced psychic abilities. Every victory against them is temporary because they evolve from every defeat. Perhaps the most terrifying is what the Tyranids do to psychic communication. The shadow in the warp blankets space as a hive fleet approaches, creating a complete blackout of astropathic communication. Worlds become isolated, unable to call for help. For psychers caught in this shadow, it's like hearing millions of screaming voices simultaneously. A psychic pressure so intense it can liquefy their brains. And they don't just adapt, they steal. The DNA of everything they consume gets cataloged and incorporated into their genetic library. The tentacled Maleceptor shows traces of Aeldari neural structure. The hulking Carnifex has the durability of orc physiology. Every race they devour makes them stronger. The Tyranids arrive with advanced teams too. Genestealer cults infiltrate worlds decades before the Hive Fleet appears, injecting genetic material into hosts, creating hybrids that look increasingly like the local population while remaining psychically linked to the hive mind. By invasion time, worlds are compromised from within. The Imperium has identified at least 9 major hive fleets: Behemoth, Kraken, Leviathan, and others, each with distinct invasion patterns. But here's a truly terrifying part. Many xenobiologists believe these massive fleets are just a vanguard of a much larger swarm. If what's arrived so far is merely a scouting force, what happens when the main body reaches our galaxy? Green Tide, the Orc Gestalt field. While the Tyranids represent cold biological perfection, imagine a species that flips scientific logic on its head and thrives through pure chaotic energy. What if I told you that somewhere in the galaxy there's a race where red vehicles literally go faster because enough muscle-bound greenskins believe they should? Orcs are the galaxy's most successful failure. A species with no formal education, agriculture, or coherent leadership that somehow manages to be an unstoppable force across the stars. Originally created by the Old Ones as living weapons during the War in Heaven, these green brutes have outlived their creators and evolved into something both hilarious and horrifying. What makes orcs truly unique in the 40k universe is their bizarre fungal biology. Every orc is part of a complex ecosystem. When orcs die, they release spores that burrow into the ground and begin growing new orcs and their supporting organisms. First come the squigs, simple creatures used for food and tools. Then snotlings and Gretchen emerge as the worker class, followed by full orc boys. This fungal reproduction makes eradicating orcs like trying to stop a forest fire with a water pistol. You might kill every green-skinned warrior on a planet, but within months, a new generation will be popping up from the soil, ready for another scrap. The truly mind-bending aspect of orc biology is their Gestalt psychic field. Orcs collectively bend reality through pure belief. Their ramshackle technology works because orcs think it should. A gun cobbled together from scrap metal and duct tape fires deadly rounds. Vehicles missing essential components roar to life, and vehicles painted red actually go faster. Literal reality warping powered by the combined psychic energy of billions of green idiots. This biological chaos extends perfectly into their society, which follows a brutally simple hierarchy. The biggest and strongest orcs are in charge. Period. From the lowly Gretchen servants to the basic boys, up through Knobs lieutenants, and finally to the massive war bosses. Your place is determined entirely by your ability to crack skulls. Power struggles are constant and often fatal, but there's no bureaucracy, just straightforward violence. When enough orcs gather under a powerful war boss, a wah forms. This psychic phenomenon amplifies a reality-bending field. Technology works better, orcs fight harder, and the collective battle list creates a feedback loop of increasing aggression. Legendary war bosses like Gestalt can unite multiple clans under one wah, creating a green tide that overwhelms entire star systems. Orcs have developed distinct cultural identities through their clan systems. The brutish Goths prefer direct close combat, decked out in black armor. The Evil Sons clan is obsessed with speed, building the fastest vehicles possible. The wealthy Bad Moons sport the flashiest gear, proving that even in orc society, economic specialization naturally emerges. The most disturbing thing about orcs? They're genuinely happy. Unlike nearly every other species drowning in the grim darkness of the far future, orcs are living their best lives. War brings them joy. An orc without a good fight is the only sad orc. They laugh in the face of danger not out of courage, but because danger means a better fight. While humanity faces extinction with dread and Eldar mourn their fading glory, orcs are having the time of their lives, proving that in a universe of endless suffering, ignorance truly can be bliss. Dark City, the Drukhari's endless thirst. While orcs laugh in the face of death, the Drukhari have twisted themselves into immortality through unimaginable cruelty. Hidden within the twisted dimensional labyrinth of the webway lies a city where eternal life is possible, if you're willing to harvest enough screams to feed your withering soul. Welcome to Camorra, a metropolis of suffering that makes the worst hive world look like a luxury resort. When the Aeldari Empire imploded and Slaanesh came knocking, not everyone chose a path of discipline or rural living. Some Aeldari doubled down on their darkest desires, fleeing into the labyrinthine dimension of the webway and establishing a refuge beyond the hungry god's immediate reach. The catch? Slaanesh still hungers for their souls. The Drukhari discovered a loophole. By inflicting extreme suffering on others, they can temporarily stave off soul death. They're caught in a cosmic addiction cycle, requiring ever-increasing doses of others' agony just to survive another day. Camorra itself defies conventional physics, a nightmarish sprawl of stolen architectural styles spanning millennia. Different districts exist in separate pockets of the webway, connected by impossible geometries. Imagine an evil Vegas inside a pocket dimension where the architecture itself reflects the power structure within. This structure revolves around three major groups forming a gruesome ecosystem of suffering. The Cabals, led by calculating Archons, conduct military raids bringing fresh victims to Camorra. In Kabbalite society, betrayal is a standard career advancement strategy. At the top sits Asdrubal Vect, who rose from slave to supreme overlord through schemes so complex they'd make a chess grandmaster's brain melt. These captured victims feed into the witch cults, where gladiatorial combat becomes a twisted art form. Arena fighters perform impossible martial feats while audiences siphon the pain and terror of combatants to rejuvenate themselves. The more creative and drawn out the deaths, the greater the spiritual nourishment. The victims who survive often end up with homunculus covens, flesh-crafting madmen who turn torture into science. These ancient beings, barely resembling Aeldari anymore, keep subjects conscious through experiments lasting centuries. Some victims have their pain receptors amplified 1,000-fold, experiencing agony so intense their minds fracture into countless pieces, yet are prevented from the mercy of insanity. Drukhari raiding parties strike without warning through hidden webway portals, using technology that fuses advanced engineering with torture devices. Their weapons cause excruciating deaths, their craft loaded with prisoners, and their portable pain engines extract suffering during the journey back. This civilization has industrialized suffering for 10,000 years with immortality as a reward. Their need for fresh victims is constant, as the rejuvenating effect of each torture session diminishes over time. An addiction on a civilization-wide scale, a culture desperately avoiding the cosmic consequences of their ancestors' actions. So, which Xenos threat has actually come the closest to bringing humanity to its knees? The answer might surprise you. While Tyranids and orcs have carved bloody paths through Imperial space, it's the mysterious Rangdan Xenocides that nearly broke the Imperium in half. This conflict was so catastrophic that the Emperor himself had to personally intervene, and afterward, every record of the Rangdan was deliberately erased from Imperial history. The greatest Xenos threat the Imperium had ever faced remains virtually unknown to most citizens. The Rangdan's brutal efficiency and technologies decimated entire Space Marine legions before their defeat. The beasts, under Gestalt, spread devastation across multiple sectors, leaving worlds burning and billions dead. Hive Fleet Leviathan continues to adapt and devour world after world despite the Imperium's best efforts. Examining these complex civilizations, from the mind-controlling Tau to the soul-harvesting Drukhari, the Imperium's paranoia seems rational. But in a galaxy where humanity has fallen so far from grace, who's really the monster and who's the victim? I'll leave that uncomfortable question for you to ponder.